You know, I never pictured myself in a situation like this, fighting to near death against the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. For of all things, me just trying to remind the world of a long-forgotten Nintendo DS game, and to see if it's even worth remembering. I thought they were the good guys who'd be down to preserve their history, but I guess even heroes want to keep some things a secret. So the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games were famously made by Konami, but after many solid entries into the Turtles franchise, they decided it was time to pass the torch along to new developers, and Ubisoft was unfortunately the ones to put on the ninja mask. At first, one might have thought they could do a good job handling the Turtles property. They've made some solid games before, but we were proven wrong by their first entry into the Turtles franchise. A movie tie-in just called TMNT that was connected to the 2007 Turtles movie. To say the least, it wasn't well received. Then in 2009, to celebrate the Ninja Turtles' 25th anniversary, Ubisoft decided to pump out 3 games that year, oddly each different from one another. You'd imagine any Turtles fan would be ecstatic at the news. I knew as a kid I sure was. We got TMNT Turtles in Time reshelled for the Xbox 360, which was a remake of the beloved classic, but with all new style made in 3D with a new engine. It dropped the ball, disappointing fans. And then TMNT Smash Up for the PS2 and Wii, a Super Smash Bros. Clone based off the 2007 movie that oddly included the Rabbids as a playable character? Okay. Weird choice, but sure, why not? The game was actually pretty fun. I loved it as a kid, but taking the rose-tinted glasses off for a second, it actually wasn't that good of a game. Still fun though. And then the game that the Turtles seem so adamant about me not discussing with y'all, called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Arcade Attack. Seems like a perfectly fine game. It's just another arcade beat-em-up, pretty run-of-the-mill for the Turtles, but this time for the Nintendo DS. That made it even more exciting for the nostalgia-thirsty fans. Well, that's what I'm hoping to dive deeper in to see what this game is all about, to see why the Turtles would want to hide something like this from us. So, let's see, the game was developed by Ubisoft Nagoya? Nagoya? I don't know, I butchered that.
Ubisoft Nagoya.
Ubisoft Nagoya.
A small Japanese subgroup of Ubisoft. Well, okay, what kind of games have they made? Oh, okay, not off to a great start. I'm sure there's tens of fans of the Pet series out there, but not too sure many of them were raving for these developers to make a Ninja Turtles game. But hey, that doesn't mean they're not capable of making something good. Going into the story mode, right off the bat, the game has promise. The opening cutscene begins in the style of the OG Eastman and Laird comics, the story being rather straightforward. Something is causing all the clocks in New York to go out of whack, creating mayhem throughout the city. Trains are being forced to stop, parking meters busting open, and worst of all, traffic jams. The criminals of New York City see this as an opportunity and make good use of it by robbing banks, vandalism, and causing all-out chaos, and the only thing able to stop this are the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Then it cuts to the Turtles in their lair trying to figure out what's causing the clocks to wig out. It seems to be the Shredder causing temporal pulses in time. Now that kind of raises an eyebrow because what the heck does that mean? Raphael goes on to say that the Shredder has been long dead, but if he's back he needs to be taken down immediately. But for some goofy reason, Master Splinter interrupts him and shows the Turtles a newspaper that a bank robbery has occurred and the thieves were last seen headed into a construction site. Ignoring the fact that the robbers probably left the construction site by the time that newspaper was printed, they head there, putting the Shredder situation to the side, and that's where the game begins. You get to pick a character between the 4 Turtles, Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, Michelangelo, and that's it. Pretty bare bones to be honest, but thankfully the lameness of that is broken up by the Turtles having some differences between their stats. Leo's your all-around type of character. Donnie has lower health but a lengthy weapon. Raph has a short reach but is balanced out by being the strongest, and Mikey has a ton of health and is fast, but his attacks are weak. I tended to rely on Leo and Raph the most, but I played everyone to get a feel for different playstyles. Once I chose a turtle I wanted to play, the stage began. Then it hit me. Why won't you guys let us talk about this game?
A weak attack like that won't do a thing.
What do you have to hide? Enough of this. Anyways, this isn't an original take on the TMNT series or a story from the comic books. It's a continuation of the 2003 4Kids TV series, so this game seems to be a weird collage of the Turtles' past, but only between the 2003 series, which at the time of this game releasing had just ended, the 80s series for the marketing, and the comic books for the cutscene. While that isn't an extreme stretch for connecting the series, it seems rather off-putting and kind of dealt with rather clunkily. The tone of each of these turtle iterations are not entirely different from one another, but with the way this game is handled, none of them seem to be dealt with properly. And this is where we begin in the construction site. Chasing down the bank robbers, it leads with standard enemies, nothing special, just letting you figure out the ropes of the gameplay. You know, mash A for a normal attack using your weapons, B for a kick, mixing up here and there to let it feel like there's some actual combat. You also have a jump button with X so you throw in a few dive kicks, and Y so you can block. That I almost completely forgot to use throughout my playthrough. There's also a grapple when pressing A and X at the same time, which is good for clearing out baddies when overwhelmed. Typical beat 'em up gameplay, really. The attacks feel like they have power, and it's actually fun as I progress through the stage. It seemed to be going for a rather cinematic experience, with almost every enemy takedown ending with a slow-mo effect. At first it was kind of cool, but pretty quickly it got to be really repetitive. Not even through the first stage, it was starting to get a bit grating. Moving along, some destructibles were put in the path, sometimes containing health items or weapons. The weapons were pretty useless though, melee weapons being roughly 2 to 3 hits, and that's it. The weapons weren't really worth using unless it was a grenade that came in later levels and was honestly only good for clearing out a couple bad guys all at once. Once I cleared the first stage, another cutscene plays where the turtles are about to take the cash back to the bank when another temporal pulse occurs in the gangster-infested side of town. They rush there and then rinse and repeat of the first level, but in a slightly more familiar setting for the 2003 cartoon fans. It's just the city background naturally translated to the DS, if not rather simple. I went through the typical enemy types, and at the end of the stage, there was the first quote-unquote boss of the game. A gold-plated armored foot ninja. Kinda cool at first, but nothing really special. He was just a basic enemy with a larger health bar and a few more moves added to his attack list. Simple, but I'll admit still fun. After kicking the snot out of the foot ninja, the turtles interrogate him, finding out that these temporal pulses are coming from Shredder, back from the future.
Great Scott!
So those who haven't kept up with the 2003 TMNT series would really be confused right about here. And the story takes no time to try and explain to why Shredder is in the future. So for context, a quick spoiler warning for a show that's around 20 plus years old. So if you don't want to see it, skip here. So before the Turtles had killed the Shredder in a later season of the show, as a contingency plan, Utron Shredder uploaded his mind as a cybernetic engram copy of himself, using a combination of Utron technology and Earth machinery, thus preserving himself in a digital format to still wreak havoc upon the world even in death. Dude was crazy. Now that the Turtles understand why these are occurring, they realize that the Shredder would need a great amount of power to cause so much damage, which the only place in New York that could accumulate that much energy would be Dr. Stockman's Stocktronics building, so the Turtles head that way. It's another straightforward path level with a bit more background variety, taking you past the front desk, through some offices, and where the higher-ups meet. Stockman's Mousers attack you at the end, bringing on a new enemy type, but they were rather lackluster considering they're just an annoyance more than an actual threat. With the stage cleared, the Turtles bust down Stockman's office door to find the Hun at the head of it, but before they can do anything, he smoke bombs his way out of there down a zipline to a nearby building's roof, which the Turtles follow right after him, Mikey being a little more behind than the others. This is where you'd think it might be exciting to throw in some platforming challenges, going after the Hun in a rooftop chase, but nope, it's another direct path with some minor obstacles and enemies along the way. You know, I'm starting to see why the Turtles might not have wanted me to share this game, but hey, I'm still having fun, even if the level design's more than a little boring. Once caught up to the Hun, the second boss fight begins with a little bit more oomph this time. The Hun's got a rocket launcher that he weirdly seems too afraid to use. Dude doesn't bother to shoot it till his health is over halfway down, but to give him credit, he was the one to actually give any sort of challenge and killed me mid-battle. That's where I found out the points do have a use, and it's not just to buy different game modes, but I'll talk about that later in the video. Anyways, once the Turtles had Hun beaten down and tied up, they interrogated him and found out Stockman had him diverting power to a time machine hidden in the sewers. I'm pretty sure Shredder knows the Turtles live in the sewers, so not sure why they thought it was a good idea to hide the time machine right under the Turtles' noses, but it worked for some reason. On to the next stage, the Turtles are tracking the energy signal radiating from the time machine with Donnie's shell phone. At this point you understand there's no variation in any of these stage layouts, they're all straightforward shots with barely any variation, this time treading through the sewers with a few different enemy forms. The Mousers are more prominent, nipping at your ankles the whole time mainly. The signal leads the turtles right to the time machine, but also right to Karai guarding it. It's another quick boss fight. Her moveset is fun, but she didn't hold a candle to the Hun's difficulty. The turtle is now standing over Karai, telling her to do what's right and turn off the portal, but out of pure disrespect, she somehow forces the turtles through the portal and they're transported to the year 2110 specifically. This part was actually really cool to me because it's the only time the Fast Forward season has been portrayed through a video game. Well, if we're not counting the even more forgotten Ninja Turtles Fast Forward Ninja Training New York City, that was just a flip phone game. I don't think we're gonna count that. Strangely, the turtles just spawn with new armor on, which they don't seem to care to explain to the story, but the armor they're wearing is supposed to allow them to breathe in Earth's new atmosphere and adjust to the varying gravity changes that occurred in the future. While it doesn't actually change anything in the gameplay wise, it's a random aesthetic change I wish they would have at least acknowledged.
Hey! The walking toolbox turned the air back on! And my legs, too!
With the many divergent alien life forms inhabiting the city, atmosphere composition and gravity vary from area to area. I pity the fool who tries to get around without an enviropack, graviton regulator, or wrist translator.
This part really bothered me. It was just established that the turtles were sent to the future, so why does the first stage in the future look like an ancient Japanese temple? I'm all for subverting players' expectations, but this was just goofy. Anyways, it's another straightforward path. This time the enemies are slightly different in the way they look, futuristic, but no mechanical changes. Escaping the temple, the turtles see the New York City and even acknowledge that it actually looks like they're in the future now. Then Donatello just randomly appears in front of a techie looking door and starts mashing buttons till it opens, which reveals a lab that I'm just assuming is connected to Stocktronics building because Baxter Stockman is there. He tells the turtles now that the portal works both ways, Shredder can just start jumping to any point in time he pleases. He makes his getaway and the turtles are right behind him. They run through the straightforward path, once again fighting occasionally, and with a surprise turn of events, have a classic elevator showdown. The turtles get to beat down Stockman, rather quickly at that, but at least he put up a bit of a fight. His electric area of effect and laser beam jetpack mixed it up some, but even as a cyborg, he moved way too slow and clunky for it to be a genuinely fun battle. The turtles smacked him around like it was nothing, and once he was down, they got him to say where the Shredder was, in cyberspace. Again, with no real context, unless you've watched the show, the game leaves you hanging, but the turtles rush towards the cyber portal and beam in. Even though the Fast Forward season of the 2003 series was looked down upon by most TMNT fans, I loved it as a kid, and seeing an actual recognizable part of the show in the game was actually pretty cool for me. It doesn't stop the level from being really lame though, it's just another straightforward path filled with enemies. After whooping some cyber ninja butt, the turtles arrive where Cyber Shredder's been waiting for them for the past 100 years apparently. For a final boss, it wasn't bad. Shredder's design was intimidating, his spikes were bigger than usual, so you knew he meant business. He had a lot of area of effect abilities and some seemingly undodgeable attacks, which felt real cheap till I realized the boss fight introduced a new mechanic that took me way longer than I'd like to admit to figure out. I even saw the computer-controlled turtle do it, and it just didn't click for me until I died a couple times. It was just a simple wall jump mount to avoid the ground attacks, but I still ended up defeating him even if it took me way too long to figure out. After the turtles escape cyberspace, Donnie says Shredder's no longer a threat because he's imprisoned him in a shell phone, which then Mikey accidentally destroys while swinging his nunchucks around. So Shredder was just casually killed off in a silly little gag, which I can't decide if that's hilarious or really lame. Thus, that concludes the story mode, as the base game was painfully basic and it continued a series story that had already reached its finale, seemed rather pointless, especially as a celebration game for the franchise. It's hard to not see why the turtles may be a bit embarrassed by this game's existence, but that doesn't mean it was all bad. While it was more than a little lazy feeling, I enjoyed what I played. Now there is an issue because this game seems like something you could pick up and play a level or two just to grind out while riding in the back of the car with mom on the way to the grocery store, like a DS game tends to feel, or should at least. The problem is, you can't just play a level or two and pick it back up later, because the game expects you to sit through and play the whole 2-hour campaign in one sitting, because if you back out, you gotta start over, and I learned that the hard way. I was halfway through the game and then had to go do something else, came back and realized it didn't save, and it wasn't like a huge deal, but that was an hour of my life I lost. While I say this isn't super demanding for a game like this, the problem lies when it feels like it's almost designed to be played in short bursts. It's strange the devs didn't allow save points for the story. It's a minor complaint in comparison to the sea of more significant issues with this game, but it seemed like something worth mentioning. Let's talk extra game modes. They're all exactly what you'd expect from a beat 'em up. There's a stage attack, which is just a time attack, rush through a stage as fast as you possibly can, with different difficulties, nothing of note to really mention. Survival mode plops you right in the middle of a single part of a stage and you get to fight till your last breath. You don't have access to every stage from the story mode, but each stage does vary in enemy types, so you get a slightly different experience on which level you play. Other than that, there's nothing really worth going further into detail about in this game mode either.
Nope.
Now I'm mad!
Shut up.
My favorite mode had to be the Boss Rush Remix mode. While it still didn't change anything drastically, besides putting the bosses in different stages, it did put the best part of the game, which were the boss fights, into one big challenge. I'm not using the word challenge here lightly either. I don't know what happened to the difficulty. It just skyrocketed in this mode. I kept trying, but I just couldn't get to the end. Partly I'd say due to cheap game design, but also the bosses just seemed to get way stronger and smarter out of nowhere. I got to Dr. Stockman, but after that I couldn't get past it, but I'm sure I'm not missing anything, even if I didn't complete it. Now all these bonus modes weren't bad or anything. Really, they added some replayability to it, with some minor alterations, especially with the added difficulties you have to unlock. The real problem lies in the fact it added too much replayability. I had to play through the story mode multiple times just to unlock these modes, and once was enough for me. That's where most of my problems with this game lie. Besides the base gameplay being rather vanilla, I had to play through the story mode so many times so I could earn enough points to unlock these other game modes, and to be honest, it wasn't worth it. I just wanted to fully experience the game, but the grind was a pain, so much so, I gotta confess, I cheated a little and used an action replay code to have insta-kill turned on, as well as had the emulator sped up just to rush through the replays of the campaign. Each time I played the next unlocked difficulty to see if there were any new unlockable characters or extra hidden somewhere, because this game is just not well documented, but I had no luck. Essentially, I just wasted my time. It's an option if you really want to play it though. Then there's the fact that this game was struggling to find an identity. At first it seems like the devs were just trying to pay homage to the series using different aspects of it, but really after diving deeper into this game, really just felt like it was originally a 2003 series game that got taken over by the 25th anniversary celebration and crammed with poorly implemented nostalgia bait. The game was marketed like an 80s arcade beat 'em up, with the box art even using a variation of the classic logo, calling itself Arcade Attack, and the back of the box using the cheap arcade layout to really sell it. Then there's the cutscenes. While it's kinda neat to use the retro comic style, it felt a little silly to use such a gritty version of the Turtles to tell so many cheesy jokes, and the cutscenes were just filled with them, which was in line with the 2003 series, but at the same time, there was just such a sharp contrast. Now admittedly, I haven't read the old comics yet, so maybe they actually are fitting, but just based off the art style, I'd say probably not. Honestly, mashing all these turtle variants together could have worked great if done properly, like in the Turtles Forever movie, but it wasn't. It was just a lame cash grab.
Hey dude, you're making me look bad.
Alright, hold on. Instead of a fight, I have another idea. Aw, come on.
Aw, Shell, not again! Now you've done it!
Oh yeah?
Time to face the punishment! Cowabunga!
Sorry about that. Where was I? Oh yeah, this game is basically just a lame cash grab. Terrible one? No, not really. I won't lie and say I didn't enjoy the game a little bit, even if I did start to get bored near the end of the main campaign. Now, if I played this game near the Turtles' celebration of the 25th anniversary, I still probably would have enjoyed it. Heck, probably would have liked it even more as a kid, because I didn't know any better. But looking at it realistically, it just ain't it. I know the Turtles aren't happy with me that I dug this game up from their past, but the way I look at it, it's important to not let games like this be completely forgotten, because without remembering the mistakes we've made in the past, how else are we expected to grow in the future?
So here's a little story I like to tell about four youngsters coming out of their shell.